My name is Vincent Leone, and we are so excited for you to Edge. This is our first ever virtual event since the restart of Leaders Edge in April of 2024. Although it is sad not to be in person with all of you, we are excited to be able to offer a dynamic virtual presentation, offering a lot of the same value, getting to connect with other like-minded leaders, getting a specific tool, walking through it to upskill in an area of leadership on your personal leadership journey. We like to call what we're doing here the Leadership Gym. Many of you who've been at a Leaders Edge event in the past, you've heard us use that analogy before. So I want to briefly describe that. I want to start off with sharing a quote that we love at High Performance. Leadership is an influence relationship among leaders and followers who intend real change for mutual purposes, by Joseph Ross. There's 5 tenets of leadership that we love to briefly talk about. The first one is that of what the quote says. Leadership is influence, not control. The next one, leadership is all about relationships. Relationships not only with yourself, looking internally, but also knowing and understanding those of others. Next, leadership is an intentional journey. It's not something that's done haphazardly and aimlessly. And we're going to talk a little bit about how high performance has a very intentional 3-step process that really happens in perpetuity. In a moment, I'll describe a little bit about that. Leadership is all about a change orientation, making not only what leadership is better for the sake of leadership in general, but also refining your skills constantly. It requires that growth mindset. And last one, it's purpose driven. We're going to talk in a moment about how everything begins with knowing who you are and living from and for a purpose. So a little bit about High Performance's history. For those who are new, it was founded back by Michael Ross, who's going to be our speaker today, in 2008. After learning leadership in his military service and then spending time in corporate America, he decided to go out on his own and start to offer services in leadership development and culture change. Over time, that's developed into a variety of different workshops, assessments, leadership development programs that we've mentioned on Lead in the past, and coaching. And our core belief is that leadership is the most important business skill, hands down. And we often say that somewhat of a fallacy is that people believe that leadership actually exists simply because there's people in authority positions within an organization. But we know and have learned that leadership is something that requires intentional practice. And so that's what we're here to do. And our purpose is to develop leaders to improve cultures by developing more leaders. We focus on helping leaders live fulfilled and impactful lives. And so that's why we offer Leaders Edge. And so really quick, before we get kicked off, I want to briefly talk about our PVD system. Many of you have heard of this. PVD stands for Purpose, Vision, and Disciplines, and it's our approach to everything that we do. If you notice that slide we were showing when you joined, we just recently released a new logo, and it has this triangle filled with 4 triangles. The first one in the very center, the core, is purpose. And we already mentioned that. That's one of the 5 tenets of leadership. Is searching out, looking inward and discovering who you are, identifying why you're on this earth, living with the knowledge of that, and with that in mind in everything that you do. And we believe that the greatest purpose of humankind is to add value and increase the lives of other people. And we believe that leaders, their greatest goal really should be to put the people in their charge in the best position to succeed. And so those are foundationally a couple of variations of purpose statements that we often use when working with our clients. Then we go up towards casting a vision. It's so important, as many of you know, we just talked about vision casting last month for those who join Leaders Edge. Leaders need to know where they're going and be very clear about that. And then the last 3 is twofold. The last one is D, disciplines. And it's twofold. It's the strategy, the how you're going to get towards that vision with living in that purpose. And it's the skills, it's the things that you need to develop over time, maybe some weaknesses, but also improving on those strengths that are going to help you get there. So that's that three-pronged approach that we have, the PVD system. So we wanted to give you a brief overview of who we are, how we think, what we believe, especially for those new, before we kick off today on comprehensive wellness. We like to liken our time here to the leadership gym. So thank you for coming. Thank you for committing early this morning to working out. Today, we're going to overview what wellness looks like in many areas of the life wheel, we call it. You'll see it there on the assessment. So without further ado, I want to kick it off by introducing Michael B. Ross, our principal and founder of High Performance. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to a great time today.
Hey everybody, thank you, Vincent. That was phenomenal, a great overview, and really appreciate what you do and how you synthesize and in our many ways the glue that holds us all together. So I appreciate you, and give you a virtual clap, little virtual golf clap. I appreciate that. I have a question that haunts me and it makes me think a lot, which is, what would my life be like if I were a good leader to myself? What if I cared about myself the way that I care about others? What if I took the time to focus on my life the way that I focus on others? When you're in a leadership position, oftentimes we don't have time to think about ourselves and think about the holistic nature of our lives and how our energy is being disseminated, and wondering how where I'm putting my energy is going to affect one aspect of my life versus another, and taking the time to rest and reflect on what is going on. There's this game that came out. I don't know if any of you remember this game. I think it came out in the 90s. It was called The Sims. Do you remember that? I think it's still going on. I would guess it is. It was a pretty remarkable game, but the whole idea behind the game made me think of comprehensive wellness as a really good analogy, because in the game The Sims, you build a character, and the character is really based upon yourself, and you can build your own person in different circumstances, starting at various aspects, starting in various areas of life. So you can start, for example, getting right out of college, and you have to go to job interviews, and you run into very difficult people, and you run into very difficult circumstances. You also run into great opportunities, and you can create victories in your life. But the whole concept of the game is to create balance in your life. And if you leave one area unattained, then it will start to affect the other areas of your life. And when I was a kid and we started this out, it was ornery as heck. So some friends and I got together. We would create characters to basically sabotage them, to see how long it would take before the person would just fall over and collapse. And it was pretty interesting what would happen once you would sabotage your character. So we wouldn't feed them. We wouldn't let them go to the bathroom. When they would be prompted to do certain things, we wouldn't do it. And what would happen is the person would be trying to accomplish something, and then they would stop and just start crying uncontrollably. And then it would get to the point where the person would eventually just fall over and give up. And it's a really good, again, a really good analogy that if we do not take care of ourselves, if we do not take care of the person that we look at in the mirror, the person that's sitting in your pain right now, if you do not take care of that person, you will not have the energy, you will not have the efficacy, and you will not have the long-term vision and purpose to be able to take care of those who are in your stead. And it's oftentimes, I think, in leadership, the idea of us having comprehensive wellness seems like some farce. It seems like it's unattainable. But the reason why things are unattainable in our lives is because we do not take the time to be intentional about the things that will bring us wellness. So as you come to the Metaphoric Leadership Gym today, my job is not to tell you how to create wellness in your life. That is your job. Your job is to assess and to figure out where you feel you could improve, where you could create more wellness and a more holistic nature in your life. But make no mistake, if you do not create wellness in your life, if you do not have the energy and the efficacy you need in your own life, you will not be able to lead well, because part of your job as a leader is to create an environment of wellness wherever you are. So think of yourself as this force field. When you go into a room, you create an energy in that room. And that energy is going to be heavily based upon how well you are. And I like the idea that if you can become so good at leading yourself, when it comes to others, the effort isn't that great, because the hardest person that we will have to lead is ourselves. So here's what I want to do today. I want to dive into this idea of comprehensive wellness and kind of create the Sims atmosphere for us today so we can evaluate where we are. So the first thing I want to do today is I want to assess. I want to see where you're at. I want you to see where you're at. I want you to assess your wellness. Like any journey, if you wanted to go to Washington, state of Washington, Seattle, Washington, the first thing you would do in order to map out your journey is you would say, here's where I am. And that's what the assessment does. It just is a way to say, here's where I am. And I do have to say this before we take the assessment. Please do not use shame, guilt, or judgment when assessing yourself. It is the most prevalent three energies that people use when they're assessing themselves: is shame, guilt, or judgment. Just because your scores may not come out the best, because if you haven't assessed yourself in a while, my guess is there's going to be some poor scores on your assessment. So what I ask you to do is look at the assessment like a scientist and just observe and be interested in the answers. No, don't judge it. Just be interested. Okay. So we're going to assess. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to analyze. Okay. I see where we're at. Quick question. How did I get here? And what can I do about it? What can I do differently if I would analyze and I take the time? And this is where strategy comes into play. You know, leadership is a balance. It's a balance of motivation. You absolutely have to have purpose. You absolutely have to have intrinsic motivation to sustain as a leader, to trudge and go to places that no one else has gone before. You must have deep intrinsic energy. But you also have to be a strategist. All that motivation in the world, you can have all the motivation in the world, but if you don't have a strategy, then you are going to be lost, spinning out of control with a lot of motivation. And then the third part is you got to have the skills. So you got to have motivation, you got to have strategy, and you have to have skills. So we analyze and we figure out a strategy on how we can do better. And then we've got to act, which is where you gain the skills. And this should be a mantra in all of our lives when it comes to practical leadership and it comes to being effective with other people. We should always assess where we are, analyze, think strategically, and then discipline to act, to move forward, to keep moving forward, even in the face of adversity. So if y'all are ready to get started, real quick thumbs up. Let's get started. Here we go. Where are you? Here's what I'd like you to do. We're going to take the next 20 minutes, and what I want you to do is I want you to fill out the comprehensive wellness assessment. Again, don't judge it. Don't shame yourself. Don't guilt yourself. All I want you to do is take the assessment, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to break out. We're going to have small discussions. I'd like you to briefly introduce yourself. Just tell people who you are, where you are, what you do, and then we'll get into the discussion, which is which area of wellness would you like to focus on this year and why? We're not getting into strategy yet. What we're doing is we're just saying this is the area out of all the areas. This is the area I'd like to focus on. I'd like to put more energy. I'd like to be more intentional in this area. So without further ado, if you don't have the assessment, please download it and take that assessment. And then we're going to break you out into your discussion rooms. And I look forward to hearing about your discussions. And it'll be great for y'all to get to know each other better. So we'll see you back here in about 20 minutes.
So take about 10 minutes to complete that assessment you haven't already, and then we will get back on when we're going to push you out to your breakout rooms.
Great. So would a couple people real quick, I would like to hear. I had a great group that I was a part of. Would anybody, I'm looking for 3 volunteers to speak to the entire group about who you are, what you want to focus on this year, and then we'll get back to it. Anybody want to share?
I'll do it.
All right, let's go.
So I had Jay, Jim, and Max in my group. And ironically, the 3 gentlemen all seemed to score the lowest with the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of things. Jim had a little bit of physical stuff going on because nobody wants to do anything in this cold 7-degree. Actually, Max said it was 1 degree in Erie right now. So nobody wants to move in the coldness. And then there was me. My lowest was financial at the moment. So, but we had a good discussion and we all want to improve in our areas that we need to.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing, Marissa. I know that, again, these things in this moment, again, it's great to get a snapshot. It's great to get the overview. And then I know everyone's kind of itching to go, okay, now what am I going to do about it? Which we'll get to. But first, it's being able to observe and then soak it in and let it sit in for a second. So appreciate you sharing that. Anybody else? Chris.
I'll speak on behalf of our group. I was with Steve, Julie, and Natalie, and I noticed that our tendency was to talk about our weaknesses first, but then one person shared their strengths. So then we kind of circled back to talk about our strengths and why they were our strengths, and what was it that we were doing that allowed our strengths to be our strengths, so that maybe whatever our weaknesses were, that we could shift some energy in that direction. And then right before we came back, Steve was talking about time blocking. We were talking about scheduling things. That's how you get things done. If it gets scheduled, it usually gets done, kind of thing. And I forgot to say I work with the YMCA, and a physical was one of the things that I needed to work on, even though I do work at the Y, but it's more so the preventative, right? Like, you should go see the doctor before something bad happens to get all your screenings done, because as we get older, those things just kind of lurk in the side, right?
Yeah. The thing is, Chris, I've heard this many times. They say that the mind stays young, but the body gets older. And so we're always younger in our mind than we think that our body is. So we don't think to go to the doctor, because I'm still 21, right? I'm still healthy and whole. But yeah, that's a great reminder again, for all of us to make sure that we're keeping track of our physical health. All right. I am, just for sake of time, appreciate everybody sharing, but I'm going to get on to the next section because we do have one more breakout to get to. But this is such a great exercise. Again, in leadership practices, in the practicality of it all, we make a ton of decisions. We make so many decisions every day. In fact, the research shows we make about 60,000 decisions every day. 95% of those are subconscious. They're habitual. We do the same things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And what assessment does is it gets you out of status quo. It gets you out of habit, and it has you assess your habits and has you assess the results of things that we don't normally think about consciously. So really important thing, is really important leadership practice in general, to constantly assess, to constantly evaluate, to constantly gather data. Then the next part is we need to then understand that who you are organizations tell people who they are by what they do. And what I don't know if that slide was accidentally left in there, but it was. So we're on to analyze, which is what will I do? So here I've got all the information. What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? So what we need to do now is we need to write our answers to the following. Because here's why. I really want to make this point. For all of us to lead a fulfilled and impactful life is a leadership journey. Remember that leadership is an influence relationship. So when you decide for yourself, this is why I don't really delineate oftentimes between a self-leader, somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of hierarchical power within an organization, somebody who doesn't have a leadership position that we point to as an influencer within an organization. Because if a person decides that they are going to live a fulfilled and impactful life, that is the start of a leadership journey. That means you're cutting through the noise and you're deciding to lead, because you are going to go places that nobody else has gone, because no one for you can decide what it is you want for your life. Nobody. Only you can decide that. And if you decide that you're going to lead a fulfilled and impactful life, that you are going to get the most out of this, that you're going to venture out and you're going to risk and you're going to challenge preconceived notions, you're going to challenge assumptions, you're going to challenge status quo, you're going to challenge the quotes, the worst quotes in cultures, which are, that's not my job, or that's always the way it's been done here. Those are two toxic phrases that we hear in organizations, and no one thinks to challenge it. But what leaders do is they say, no, there is a better way. There is always a better way. There's always a brighter future. There's always another mountain to climb. There's always a way we can improve the quality of humankind. There's always places we can go. So what leaders do, how leaders increase influence, is first they decide. They make a decision. After analyzing where they're at, they make a decision that they are going to strategically and intentionally go places that nobody else has gone. So here's why this is so important. Is because right now you have to decide, what do you need to do with this information now? So you figured out what you needed to know. Now we got to figure out what you need to do. So what do you need to do to increase wellness in your life? You know it deep down. Okay, now we can do all of the BCDE stuff, which we'll talk about in disciplines. We can blame, complain, deflect, or make excuses, or we can do something about it. So I want to ask, what do you need to do to increase wellness in your life? What is the first thing you're going to do, and when will you start? Answer these three questions. We'll break out. We'll have another discussion about this, and then we'll come back together and we'll talk about how to act. Go ahead and get started with this activity. It's never enough time, and I would tell you all to exchange information, and talk to each other. It's great, and I'm so glad you all said that, because that's why we're building our community platform, is for a place for you all to connect and talk and share ideas with each other, hold each other accountable. Again, we don't want leadership to be a lonely place. We want it to be a journey for people who are really about, okay, I don't know, just again, I want to be with people who think like I do, behave like I do, communicate like I do, when I need edified, right? When I need build up. That's what we want. We don't get to spend a whole lot of time with people who think, behave, and communicate like us. When you're an intentional leader, when you're somebody who is after it, who isn't just going to talk about it, who's going to be about it, it's important that you get together with other people who share that mindset, because it can be very lonely. And as far as Jim Rohn said, that is 3% of the population. 3% of the population is clear about a vision for their life. They really do live with purpose, and they do have systematic disciplines to help them get to where they want to go, to fulfill their purpose and vision. So we have to have people in our lives that we are intentional about connecting with, so that we can have camaraderie. because it's a very, very important part of growth and change. So grateful that we get a chance to let you all talk to each other. You are the scientists of your own life. You are the leaders of yourself. You are the leaders in your own life. And I want more than anything for you to be a leader that you're proud of. You're proud of. And so we want to provide an environment to do that, and discussion is a huge part of that, and sharing things with each other and encouraging each other and pushing each other to be better is a huge part of that. So I'm glad you got a chance to analyze. I hope there was some really good discussion about when you're going to get started, because we do know that it is the start that stops most people. There's an old saying that goes, there's no discipline that seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of great living and peace for all who are trained by it. Now, I don't know about all of you. One of the reasons that I'm so intentional about assessing and analyzing and then making changes where needed is because I want to have peace in my life. You can go after a lot of different things, but there's nothing like that sense of peace and that sense of calm that comes when you know you have done everything in your power to take care of yourself and those in your stead. And that's what brings peace, is when we are disciplined. So that's where we're heading next. We're heading to disciplines. So how do we act? We've assessed, we've now analyzed, we have a little bit of a strategy. So how do we act? And the first thing is we have to understand the 7 elements of transformation. I have studied change behavior, especially when it comes to developing leaders, for the past 20 years. And here's what I have come to through all my studies, all my research. Here's what I've found. There's 7 elements to transformation. Now, you can fill in these gaps however you need to, but understand, without these things working together, it's going to be difficult for you to sustain growth and change. So let's go through them. Number 1 is resolve. That means you have to have the want to. I love what Bill Parcells said, because I'm often accused of being a motivational speaker. I'm a very motivated individual. This is actually how I am all the time. So people are like, well, you're a motivational speaker. It's no, I speak like this if we're one-to-one. I speak like this if I'm in a small group, if I'm coaching a group of kids in basketball. I'm just a motivated individual. I have a lot of resolve. I want to have the best life. And you have to have that as well. If you are going to sustain transformation, you have to have resolve. You have to have the want to. There has to be burning desire in you if you are going to sustain and grow. So that means you have to be your own motivational speaker. You have to find out your purpose and your reasons. No one else can do that for you. And I tell my clients this all the time. If I have to pump you up every single time we get together to make you a believer, then you're not in control of your own resolve. I'm in control of your resolve. I don't want to be in control of your resolve. You've got to be in control of your resolve. You can borrow people's belief in you. You can borrow people's resolve to get you some juice, but you cannot sustain without having your own resolve. So you need to find out the reasons why you want to change, and you need to remind yourself of that all the time, because this is the most important element of transformation. And I tell clients this all the time. If you are putting people in our programs, in coaching, and you're putting them through our consulting, and they don't want to change, we are wasting our time, and you're wasting your money, and we're wasting precious resource. Because if somebody doesn't want to change, here's what I'll tell you: they will not change. And that goes for all of us as well. We always have to find those reasons. Next, relevance. The information has to be relevant in your life. Whatever you are focused on has to be relevant in the holistic approach that you take to your leadership in your life. The next thing is rigor. Nothing worth having doesn't come without adversity. Everything worth having, everything that we look at and we say that was worth it, came with rigor. The rigor helps hammer out the character that we need to forge in order to sustain the transformation. I love the idea that character is the mark or stamp on a coin that is hammered out by a chisel. And when you go towards transformation, when you go towards growth in your life, if it is not hard, you will not appreciate it. And so it has to have rigor. The next is relationships. You must build relationships along the way. Nobody is successful in life without relationships. In fact, most people are successful as they look back on their life. They say, it was this person, it was this person, it was this person who helped me get over the hump in challenges in my life. So relationships are key. My dad used to say that relationships are the bridges over which values are transferred. And when you are in relationships with others and you transfer values, you make deep connections and very strong bridges. The next two are together. Frequency and longevity. You want to excel transformation, increase the frequency. You want to sustain transformation, have more longevity. So increase the amount of iterations that you have in the specific area of focus. If you focus on wellness and you increase the frequency of touches and iterations, you are going to accelerate your transformation. It's common sense. And longevity is, I commit to a period of time, and it's a minimum of 6 months. If you want to have real transformation, commit to 6 months to focusing on that area and being disciplined and intentional. And then finally, accountability. Accountability. This is without equivocation one of the most important aspects of transformation. You have to have someone or some ones who are going to ask you, are you being disciplined towards your transformation? And you have to be able to answer that. And anyone who really has resolve never, ever wants to tell their accountability partners no. They want to tell them yes. But that person who you have as an accountability partner, coach, consultant, mentor, friend, peer, it doesn't matter. They will be there to pick you up when you fall. They'll be able to give you certain hits of energy that you need to keep your feet moving forward, because change is difficult. It is hard. These 7 elements of transformation, I would ask you to also, as you're going towards transformation, look them over and make sure that you're checking these boxes along the way. For disciplines to stick in our lives, remember this: environment is greater than DNA. Environment is greater than DNA. You've heard the saying, birds of a feather flock together, and we will become like those that we spend the most time with. In leadership, one of my greatest charges to leaders is create an environment, create a culture that is conducive for the results or the change that you want. That means the thoughts, the behaviors, the communication that is shared in an environment has boundaries, that is protected. One of the toughest things to do in leadership, especially if you've inherited, for example, a poor culture, if you've stepped in to a situation where there's a poor culture, meaning you have a lot of BCDE, blaming, complaining, deflections, and excuses, and you're asked to lead the charge with a group of people who have been habitual about blaming, complaining, deflections, and excuses, is to step in that environment and to say, no more. There's now a boundary around how we're going to act in this environment. And the reason why is because I want this environment to be most conducive towards the results that we want and the relationships we want to have. Why I'm so passionate about this is because I've been in a toxic culture, and I've also been in great cultures. We spend a third of our waking hours at work. Leaders create the environment. They are responsible for 70% of the variance in a culture, for the environment itself. Leaders are responsible. And I want to charge everyone to make it a great environment. You're talking about precious hours of people's lives. You get to inspire people to become their very best, and you can create an environment to do that. So we always have to challenge BCDE in our own selves first. Blaming, complaining, deflections, and excuses. My challenge to everybody who starts with me in coaching is for the first week, The first week we're together, I want you to get a notebook out, or I want you to take out your phone. I want you to make a note that says BCDE. And every time you hear blaming, complaining, deflections, and excuses in your head, anytime you communicate BCDE in a conversation, you've got to go back and you've got to mark it down. And I want to see how quickly you become aware of the powerlessness that shows up in your BCDE, because BCDE is simply an indication that a person feels powerless. If I blame others for what is happening in my life, or if I blame environment, I blame circumstances, then I am no longer in control of my life. I am giving power to something else. And that's what BCDE is. It is giving your power to something outside of yourself, saying that that is in control of how you show up. And it is just not the case. And there is no great leader in the world who allows BCDE to control their lives. They instead recognize BCDE and they act anyways. Because here's something that is a fact. 95% of people, according to Harvard Business, avoid or run from adversity. And the greatest adversity that we're going to face is our own BCDE. People become habitual in BCDE. They become habitual in their excuses. They become habitual in saying over and over again that they're powerless, but we are not. We must act anyways. So as we get into, start going towards the close here, I want to tell you about a client that we had, and I wrote an article recently about comprehensive wellness. And Jen is, I changed her name, but Jen is an example for all of us. So Jen, here was Jen. When she came to me, she was under constant pressure and stress. In fact, she worked at a company that she did not want a leadership position, but she was somebody who showed up every day. She worked hard, and they saw that people liked her. They were influenced by her. So the powers that be put her in a leadership position, didn't even ask her about it. Okay, they just put her there, and she took the pay and she took the promotion, and she was grateful for it. And it wasn't that she completely resisted. She was flattered, thought about it, decided to do it, but she decided to take the position more because she didn't want to let people down versus the fact that she actually wanted it. But she came in, and it was within 6 months. You know, here she had 11 people on her team, and only about 3 of those people were intentional, were engaged, cared, liked the company, liked her. And so she was under this constant stress and pressure. And what it was she's constantly having to spin plates of keeping people moving, keeping them focused, keeping them on task. And so she would forget about her own tasks. She had a mountain of work that she had to do. And finally, she was ready to quit her job, a place that she worked for a long time that she loved, and she wanted to quit because of this constant stress and pressure. Well, somebody asked her to reach out to me. She reached out. First thing we did, we assessed and analyzed what was going on. And I told her, I said, Jen, if you don't take care of yourself, it does not matter what leadership skills that we develop, and how good you become at communication, and how good you are at evaluating the systems in the business, and how great you are at helping people stay on track. None of that matters if we don't take care of you. So we assessed her wellness, and we ended up looking at 2 areas of her life where she felt she was falling short, and we focused in detail on those things. And I said, we are not going to spend a lot of time stressing about what's going on in the ether. What we're going to do first is we're going to focus on you. Well, she started to develop new disciplines. Now, discipline begets discipline. Discipline begets discipline. She started setting boundaries in her own life, around her time, around her yeses and her nos. Every time you say yes to say something, you say no to something else. She started saying no to things. Well, long story short, over the next year, she started to, all the things that she was doing for herself personally became a habit. And she started naturally setting boundaries at work. And she started setting boundaries with individuals. And she started saying, hey, this is not going to fly anymore, and became more confident and bold because she did it in her personal life. She started doing it at work. Well, out of those 11 people, Out of those 11 people, 5 of them quit on their own, because once she started setting boundaries, they no longer knew they could show up and walk all over her. And so she started setting boundaries, putting people on PIPs, and those people started leaving. And she ended up creating a team of people who she really, really enjoyed spending time with. And they did remarkable things. And just for sake of time, I will tell you that Jen is now thriving. She's been promoted another time. So now she's leading a team of about 50 people, but she still just focuses in on singular individuals and helping them become the very best that they can be. And then she asks them to do the same. And that is Leadership 101. And so I would ask if anyone has any questions. I know that we went a little long. We were testing this out for the first time today. I'd love to answer any questions, but I'm going to have to turn this back over to Vincent for sake of time. But I do want to say, as we're closing up today, and before I turn it back over to Vincent, that my team and I are always here to help. So if you have my email, you have my cell phone, and you want to work through something, there's no charge for you reaching out to us and asking us some questions. If we decide to work together, we'll let you know where the boundaries are. We will always keep the boundaries open. But the fact is, we are about this work. We are truly ourselves after comprehensive wellness in our own life. And so we're vigilant about this, and we want to see this for you, because I do believe that leadership has the power to change the world. It changed my life. Simple leaders coming in, believing in me, seeing me better than what I saw myself, and it changed everything for me. So I believe in the power of leadership. So there is no charge for you reaching out. So anytime you have questions that you want answered, please reach out to us. We want to be a beacon for you. We want to help you. We want to help shine light on things in your life so that you can lead others as well. So Vincent, take it over, my friend. Sorry I cut you short.
Sure, no problem. So yeah, we're so thankful for everyone participating. We wanted to mention one thing really quick. If you are interested in a more focused time with Michael and some other of our consultants, we do have a special offer for you. We have 8 spots available for a 90-minute group coaching session for $49. $350 value, just $49. 8 spots available, and this will be happening in the first or second week of March. And so if you are interested, feel free to scan that QR code. I'll also drop the link in the chat really quick so you can navigate to it right now. And this is not you having to submit payment. It's simply just us gathering information so we can reach back out to you if you are interested in learning more about this opportunity for group coaching. And again, this is a focused time with Michael and a couple of other of our consultants who will be able to take what you assessed, how you analyze it, and help you put a personalized plan together. Also, as we always mention, Michael's book was released this past fall. We'd love for you to purchase that, be reading it alongside us, have a chance to ask Michael questions, again, either on these calls or through email. And also, if you do have that book, you've read it, please give us a review. And Michael, we could skip over that for now. I think you gave us that call to action. The last thing is just to register for the next event. We are going to continue doing virtual for the foreseeable future. I know for some that is disappointing because you loved getting together, having some great food, but we still want to offer really dynamic presentation for you. So next month, we're going to be talking about community and how do you develop community? How do you take these themes of casting vision from January and comprehensive wellness from this month and start to build that out to greater people? So thank you again. We are so glad to have you. Appreciate your intention, your time and conversation, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Vincent.
Thanks, everybody.
Coming in spring 2025, we're launching the High Performance Membership Site, a game-changing platform with exclusive tools, resources, and connections to help you lead with impact. I'd also like to share my new book, The Leadership Edge. I wrote this book to help those in leadership positions, as well as those who are aspiring to be leaders, Help others and yourself develop into a leader that will always have the leadership edge.